Welcome to the fourth webinar for Grow Our People, Grow Your Farm webinar series. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful Friday, and I hope you're ready for some great discussions this morning. This is as I said, the fourth one of our series. And if you haven't been able to listen to any of the previous ones, you'll be able to find them all on our employment hub under the continued learning and development and all the resources that we've talked about as well. But today, we are going to focus on supporting others with effective communication. So this is looking at the next generation and the different communication methods that everybody may have and how we can make that work as a team, as well as some of that well-being pieces as well. So for those of you who aren't sure who I am, I'm Olivia Weatherburn, the National Extension Program Manager at Beef+Lamb New Zealand, and I lead our People and Capability investment portfolio here at Beef+Lamb New Zealand. And joining me today, I have Sarah Donaldson, who has a wealth of knowledge in this aspect of things, and she's going to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about herself in a minute, as well as she has brought along with her today James Bruce, who is a farmer who has got some experiences that he's going to be able to share with us. During today, though, we want to ensure that we can get some of the knowledge that is in the room, which is from you guys as well. So we are going to be asking you to do some breakout rooms and to bring some of that information that you have and learn off each other. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. With your internet, if you're having unstable internet, just turn your cameras off. Use the chat function, ask questions, put your hand up if you want to interact as well. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah to give a little bit of introduction of who she is and what we're going to be doing today. Sarah.
Oh, thanks, Olivia. Thanks for having me on. So just a little bit of an intro. I am based in the Wairarapa, the coordinator for the local rural support trust here, but I also am a consultant, I guess, for FarmStrong. I've got a background in clinical psychology. So I guess I spend a lot of time out with people when they're facing some kind of challenge or adversity, whether it's individually or as a whole community. So yeah, that's kind of day-to-day life for me, I suppose, and hence probably why Olivia asked me to come into this forum. So yeah, we're obviously going to focus on supporting others and communication skills. And look, I'm going to share some insights from my experience, but really keen, because you guys all have experience, so really keen for us to kind of do this together, because mine are by no means the gold standard. They're just shared learnings, I guess, but hopefully helpful for you. So we'll kind of start with the communication stuff in a wider sense, and then we'll kind of look to how you tweak things a little bit for the older generation and the younger generation. And then we'll kind of move on to a little bit around listening skills, because although we think we all know how to listen, it's always good to come back to some key points about good listening skills, because they are one of the basis of good communication. And then move on to a little bit about how do you recognize if someone is struggling a little bit or under a lot of stress. How do you recognize that, and how do you approach them? How do you have a kind of conversation with that in order to direct them perhaps to next steps, and share some resources at the end. So with that in mind, what we're gonna kick off and get your brains tuning right from the start, so that you guys are involved. So I'd really like us just in this, we're only going to take about 5 or 6 minutes in this breakout, and just see if you can discuss some examples of where you think you or others have used effective communication approaches, or even systems, because we're on-farm systems can be really helpful for communication. So either on-farm or in your personal or family life. Yeah. So that's what we're just going to kick into, and then we'll bring that back together and feedback.
I'm going to do you want to start with your group, Sarah, and what you guys were discussing?
Yeah, sure. There was only one, but there's three of them with the one family that are on the call, which was amazing to get all three contributing to that. And they had some fantastic examples. So impressed with them. Yeah, so impressed. So I'll hand over to Julia and her family.
So some of our ones are at the beginning of the week, the manager, my brother, he writes out a list of all the jobs to be done for the week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to Friday. So we have that initially, and then every morning at 8 a.m. we have another call with us and our employees to discuss who's going to do what and any other issues that need to be brought up or any changes that need to be made to that plan. And then the third main tool we have is Farm IQ as well, so everybody can keep track of where all the livestock are and where they're going.
Yeah.
Helpful.
And then as well, we have the a bi-monthly financials meeting, which is kind of like a more governance one. Doesn't include the staff, but yeah, where we just talk about the budget and the finances and how we're tracking against that, what's gone well, what hasn't.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So looking at those
Can you
opportunities
guys
and
just
challenges.
Yeah. Can you guys just mention a bit about your staff and how you guys have come in and how you allow them to have open communication by that respect of where they've come from? Because that was the
So
gold.
my brother and I both had careers that were not farming at all, and then we've come back to farming. So we know it's not, we're not as experienced, we're learning, but we're very open to learning. Whereas our employees sort of went through Lincoln and have done the dip ag and those kinds of things. So we respect that they've actually got quite a bit more education than us.
And got a lot of experience too.
A lot of experience too. But we're quite open to that, and that works quite well. So they're actually able to tell us and go, actually, maybe we should try it and do it this way instead, or I guess remind us about the drenching and things like that as well. So they're quite good at that sort of side. We're very open to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great work, guys. I think Claire, Leslie, and James, you were having a convo. From your group, tell us what you were up to and what some of those things you came up with.
You can go, James.
Great delegation. James is just trying the mute button. There we go.
Sorry, I'm not very good with this technology thing. Yeah, kia ora, people. Yeah, effective comms, probably like you guys have sort of nailed it already earlier when you were talking, but the organisation of your own self is the biggest part of that, because you can't really come forth with your communication properly if you're not organised yourself. And in going with that, yeah, and then the small things like caring and having an interest in what they're doing.
James, we're just having trouble hearing you there. Where's your microphone sitting?
I've got no idea.
There you go. Just evenly right there, leaning forward is better.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just organisation on your own self first, in the business or whatever you're doing, and then obviously having an interest in what they do, what the people do, because it's not all about work, or it's not all about whatever you're communicating about. Like, so that's how you get the best communication out of someone else, is to, you actually care about what they're doing and what their interests are. And so I think with staff, it's a bit of a laugh to talk about what happened on the weekend, or if they weren't at work, and just things like that, to break it down to, because that brings more to the workplace as well, in a roundabout kind of way.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, Leslie, she doesn't have a microphone, so couldn't contribute, but she put it into the chat. She sort of said, yeah, transparency between the managers and the junior staff, and just having equal communication with everyone. And then in terms of my situation, I'm a success advisor for GFF, and I deal with farmers and students. And yeah, just being able to teach the students how to pick up a phone, so have the call conversation rather than just texting, which is what they're usually very good at. And I know I'm stereotyping here, but yeah, young people tend to like the messenger and texting, but picking up the phone, you tend to get so much more out of the students. So yeah, that's all I had to add on to that.
Awesome. Now, I think we had Paul and Joe. You were having some conversations. What did you guys come up with?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, I can pop in first. So, we here on our farm, we've got 2 youngish guys, and we decided that we needed to use technology more because it all sits up in Tony's head. Well, a lot of it, I mean, some of it's put down on paper. So we've just started using resolution and as a way to manage the farm and communicate, put jobs down, put tasks down. They're always carrying their phones. It seemed like a very good answer and it's intuitive for them. I'd have to say that probably Tony and I are struggling with it a little bit more because I class us as digital immigrants. We're digital natives. But yeah, just trying to find a way that communication can be easy and record keeping can be easy. And actually, I think that resolution is going to bring in a part of like a chat part of their app.
I think those are some fantastic examples of approaches, but also systems, like systems are really helpful to aid communication and especially kind of if you can get them to work for across the age range, ideally. So yeah, great feedback that's going to tie in nicely with some of the more points we're going to make. Because I guess the thing is that it's not like we taught communication skills at school, and we all learn by trial and error, and it's affected by our upbringing and our experiences and other influences and how confident we feel, with how introverted or extroverted we are. So so many differences that we bring into the room, especially when we have a team with different personalities, and what we can do to kind of, you can't do everything, but what are some general things you can do? So I just want to move into some more general strategies, I guess, and then we'll move across to the different generations. And you guys have nailed some of these, so impressed with what you've been saying. But yeah, I guess it is what that thing about like trying to lead a value-based culture where it's about a lot of it's about connection as well as the actual communication. So setting up an attitude as well as your systems that kind of say, hey, actually we're going to give time, we're going to invest in communication, we're going to invest in our relationships, and I think that's gold. It's often one of the things that I see happens probably as we on farm, we all get so busy, and that then we perhaps don't ring fence enough time for conversations and connection, and yet the payoff in the long term is massive. And it's really preventative, I guess, when things start to get a bit challenging or there's disagreements or someone isn't doing so well, then if you've invested the time that you're kind of like actually talking together, making time for each other, checking in on each other, having systems where it makes it easy, all means that if it does get tough, it's so much easier to go there. So yeah, can't emphasize that point enough about investing the time for the long haul. And I guess the other thing is when we get into discussions with people, it's often our default to kind of go to what we need to present. But if it's a two-way thing, I think that point around trying to give the time to understand and validate other people's perspectives first is really good, because if we take the time to acknowledge that, then, and if people feel heard, then they're going to actively tune into then what you have to say, right? So sometimes there's always also that thing where we have to kind of hold the reins, where we want to just direct stuff and give information, but if also we can kind of allow time for questions, if we can set the culture by saying, hey, let's ask questions of each other, let's encourage other people to be able to feedback, for them to ask questions, to them to check in if they're unsure, then, you know, we're validating them, we're validating their input, and so they're more willing to kind of invest and listen and contribute themselves, which is all good for the overall business as well. And I think like some of the examples we gave, you know, like Julia and her family were talking about giving time to acknowledge the experience of others and hear from them, hear their perspective. Just gold, yeah, really gold. A one that maybe we overlook sometimes, but I've certainly found out from experience, is like just not assuming literacy skills when we're giving information, or communication skills, because I guess that's the thing is sometimes we think that people will understand, we think that people will be able to read something or reply, but they just may not have those skills to be able to kind of do it. So just kind of checking in on that, especially with new staff, for instance, like checking in where they sit with that as opposed to not assuming, is yeah, I think it's just one we overlook often at times. And if people have some challenges there, they often feel daunted or not confident enough, or they're kind of saving face in a way. You know, they don't necessarily want to admit that that's something that they struggle with. But, you know, like I heard an example the other day where it was a young person and there was a text request kind of on farm and they had to reply about it. And like it took them, like it would have probably taken someone capable in that way, you know, a minute or two to reply, and it took them about 20 minutes just to kind of formulate what they'd say and how to word it and get the spelling right and things. So yeah, that's something that's good to check in on and then work out from there what your communication techniques and style and systems are going to be. So yeah, great examples you guys gave are some of the systems that you use to have regular contact. So some of those are kind of those more formalized ones where it's a daily meeting, or you're using Farm IQ, business meetings, that kind of thing. But also in some of those too, like I'd excuse me, really encourage when you have staff, and I'm sure you've all know this, but just those kind of formalized check-ins as well as the informal ones, right? So not so much performance-based, but you might want to have the performance-based review, but just kind of like, say, checking in what's going well, what's not going well, what are the challenges, what do you kind of need next to progress. That ring fence kind of dedicated time to have those conversations where you're again giving that attitude of, hey, you know, I want to hear how this genuinely is for you. I'm genuinely interested. I'm genuinely concerned to see where you're at and what's working and what's not working. Yeah. Now, the other thing is, look, we will all be optimistic that that comms are going to go really well, but the reality is sometimes either there is someone really lacks the communication skills to be able to do that, or there's sometimes there's just a misfit, if you like, of styles, and that can get, if you've worked on it and it feels like you're getting really stuck with that, then it's not always a bad thing to have a third party that can kind of come in to help with that. And look, yeah, Livy's just put in, ask any questions as we go, but also feel free to add in your comments, because you guys, you know, you're the experts in this field as well. But yeah, third party, and what I mean by third party is it can be someone within your circle. So I'll give you an example. I had a young guy, he came from a pretty tough background and he just didn't have life skills, communication skills, and freely admitted it. He didn't know how to talk to his boss, how to overcome something if an issue came up and it started to become a real issue. Likewise, his boss, just open comms just wasn't necessarily his go-to. He was tend to be a little bit direct and abrasive in that way, and it just became really tricky for those two to work on day-to-day kind of issues sometimes. And so what happened is we had Dad Senior in the mix in the farm team, who just was a different character, and the young person felt quite comfortable with him. So what we set up is that once a week he and Dad would have a yarn together about how it was going, and then Dad would help feed back into son, boss, about, you know, where they were tracking. So and that worked really well. And then sometimes if it's a bigger issue, you know, you can call in, have an external, someone outside the farm system as well. That can come in under RST. Sometimes, you know, we've got involved in that respect. Okay. So next
Sarah, how do
slide.
you
Yeah.
pronounce? It's just going back to that literacy and that piece. It's never a easy conversation to start in regards to going, hey, what's your literacy skills? And people are not
Yeah.
always going to say that want to say that they are, because they might feel like they're going to be judged. How do you approach that topic at the start?
Well, for me, I just find it's like anything, and well-being fits into this category too. It's just as kind of matter of fact and casual as you can kind of be about it, tends to make people more comfortable. So like, because I often leave resources for people or direct them to Farmstrong or something, and then sometimes I've realised that that's not going to be, they're not going to be able to follow that. So I've just taken to not right from the get-go, but once you've had your other conversations about other things, just sort of saying something like, well, like, how does reading and writing go for you? Is that something you're really comfortable with, or is that something that's a bit of a, you know, bit of a tough call? Because not everyone's, you know, not everyone's school or learning has been their thing. Because you know, you're obviously you know, and then tying into what is their strength a little bit as well, because obviously you're practical and you know want to get involved with farming, but yeah, how's the other side of it? How's the learning side? Does that something we want to take into account for you so that we can make sure you're supported? And so yeah, just reading, you know, using those words, reading. How's reading and writing for you? Is that easy or is that hard? Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And if we go back to the first webinar of the series where we talked about some of this piece with Lee around the VARC and actual different assessments and things to getting to know different people's learning styles, is something you can be probably building into this as well. So make sure you head back and have a look at some of those resources and those recordings from that as well. Cool. We'll move on to the next slide there, and the older generation. So the experienced generation.
Yeah, I'm just going to move my thing across. Yeah, for sure. Look, and there may be no differences. We don't want to necessarily stereotype or assume, because older generation may have fantastic communication skills, just as anyone else could have. Just, I suppose, based on some of the clashes that can sometimes go on. Just that first one, I guess, is particularly around succession or changes of roles and that kind of thing, is where you can acknowledging their experience and contributions so far. You know, they have lived a lot and so they've gained a lot. So where we can acknowledge that as opposed to dismiss it, I think is you know, just general respect, but also, you know, that if they're still wanting to be, they're still involved, so therefore we still want to value them. Yeah, so it's about valuing. But you do see sometimes communication, open communication, is sometimes not some people's strengths. It's just not how they've been brought up. It's not the upbringing for some, particularly if there's an emotive component to it. And so I guess if you can, to take the time to reflect and ask and check in about how and who they're most comfortable to communicate with, because sometimes in family systems or work teams and things, it'll just gel easier with some than with others, or in certain situations, you know, like actually if it's out while they're working, or you know, you want to come and sit around their kitchen table, or do they actually prefer something written down first that they can mull over? So and that goes for anybody, to be fair, not just older generation. If they don't see or perceive that to be important, because you know, you think about the systems that some of the younger generation are using now, and they may not have used that or see the need for it. But so it might be about explaining why you think it's important, or why you're finding that this new way of doing things is kind of effective, even if you don't necessarily agree on it, so that they can have a better understanding of why it's important to you. And then I think the other thing is, especially when it's family, is or you know, or an older farmer on farm that's maybe worked for a long time, is again around that other relationship, that wider relationship. So trying to separate out, if you like, you know, if you're having business or work or succession conversations, and then when you have family, or if you like, workmates kind of discussion. So where you can kind of try and separate them, so you still have an ability to keep investing and connecting with that person, because the more you do that, the easier comms are generally anyway, as Brucey alluded to. Other point is some of our more modern IT jargon or social media jargon, or even just how our language has evolved, just might not be the same as theirs. So just take that into account. And sometimes if we're quite busy, it can be really easy to be kind of dismissive. So just trying to, I guess, hold on to your patience in that way and allow a little bit extra time, because often a lot of people do take a little bit, they want a bit more time to process things and before they respond, right? And then the last thing, just really practical, especially the older and older we get, the reality is that hearing, vision, and cognitive issues are more prevalent, right? So we just need to kind of bear that in mind, and where we can make accommodations for that, which might be repeating things, writing things down, checking in whether they've heard, not having important, if you know they've got hearing issues, checking if they've got the hearing aid in, or making sure it's not in that hustly bustly environment where it's hard for them to hear. Or ones like my aunt. I know I talk fast, and my aunt, for instance, gets very frustrated and says, "You're speaking too fast," and I have to consciously slow down my speech just because she's getting she's got a little bit of a hearing issue. So those kind of things. Okay, and then if we could flick on, Olivia, to now the younger generation. And look, Claire, you'll have loads to add in this department, and you've already brought up some great points. And by the way, I heard fantastic feedback about you yesterday when I was out and about what a wonderful job you're doing with the GFF students, and how easily they connect with you. So you're clearly doing some great comms.
Thank you.
But yeah, back to that kind of thing. If you've got a young person coming in early on, again, not assuming, just sort of working out what and how do they find communication and learning, what works for them, what have they found works well in other past jobs or past roles, life, school, whatever, and what hasn't worked also sometimes is a good question, so that you can try and front foot that right from the get-go. Again, we're checking literacy level, just because proportionately sometimes we do end up with kiddies, young people, where they're so they're practical learners, they're hands-on, they're visual learners, kinesthetic learners and things like that, but maybe literacy might not necessarily be their jam. So, and that's probably important when you're doing contracts, right? You know, that actually that you really make sure that they've got someone else that can go through that with them and help them to ask the questions if they've got any. I've got a young person at the moment who's had a really unfortunate experience, an assault on farm, and has relocated to a different area, and so is going through a legal process around that, and that is just, some of it's just kind of a little bit above him, and so just offering to be alongside him while he works through that or gets the information that comes back, because there's a lot of technical jargon in there. I guess just, like in terms of team culture or culture in a family even too, we can set it up where it's about learning, and so we're trying to lead and role model with a culture where we're questioning, we ask questions of others, we take ownership, we take responsibility, as opposed to kind of the shame and blame under the radar stuff that can sometimes go on. So we give them opportunities to ask questions. We expect that there's going to be mistakes, and that's okay, because that's part of learning, and that they can feel okay and comfortable to check if they're unsure. And there's a I think it was Nelson Mandela, or it might be, you guys can correct me on this. No, I don't think it was Nelson Mandela, it was somebody else. But anyway, their phrase was, we succeed. We succeed or we learn, as opposed to we succeed or we fail. We succeed or we learn, right? So once it goes wrong, what have we learned from that? That kind of setting the scene for that. definitely having regular catch-ups, and as Brucey said, just showing that interest in their wider life is really key. And that might not be in a formal sitting across the table, but it might be some of those side-on-side conversations as you're fencing, or in the shed together, where you just kind of getting a sense of what's working, what's not, what are you finding challenging right now. Yeah. And then we know that the more people feel like that they can contribute and feel valued, then they're more invested, right? Which is such a better outcome for us. So we're trying to give opportunities to stretch and empower them as you go, but checking in with their comfort level with that, like what challenge do they want to take on next? What feels like too big a stretch? Yeah, so, and feel free to jump in the chat, guys, because I know you're going to have some other pearls of wisdom to add in this respect.
And
And
to
lastly,
sorry.
sorry, jump in. No,
So,
jump
so I
in.
was just going to say, Sarah, sorry, to have a lot of these conversations too. It's actually building that trust and a whole lot of things before those conversations, isn't it? So that they feel like they can open up, and you're inviting them to be able to have a platform that's comfortable and an environment that they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mean by setting the culture and leading at the start, where we're trying to build the connection, we're trying to show an interest, we're having normal conversations, we're basically setting the scene to say, let's talk about how it's going day to day, week to week, in an easy manner, so that then, if there are more challenges, that's just an extension of it, right? Yeah. So you're right, totally about setting the platform for that where we can. And if it's not easy or you're running into difficulties, actually to put that on the table, so it's like, you know what, actually, and maybe you might be able to lead that, particularly with our younger ones. They're not likely to lead that, but where we can kind of say, do you know what, I'm actually finding it seems quite hard for us to communicate easily. It seems like it's a bit hard work or uncomfortable for us. So let's think about together what will work differently. How could we try again in a different way? Because that's really important, that we feel like we can, and we feel like we can be open with each other. So okay to table that.
Cool. And Samantha's actually written out, I'm going to write, we succeed or we learn, up on the office wall. So
what we're going to move on to now, guys, and this is to get you to think about it, is I guess if someone is starting to struggle a little bit more, if they're just under a lot of stress for whatever reason, or how might we recognize that, and then how do we extend that conversation around that? So we're just going to take 5 minutes or so in our breakout rooms to think about how does ongoing stress show up inwardly and outwardly. Like, what do we see, but also how does it affect us inwardly in terms of our emotion, our cognitive, our physical, that maybe we don't see. So think of yourself, or perhaps think of other people where you've seen this play out, and let's have a quick brainstorm about it.
cool. I'm going to send you into breakout rooms. I'm actually going to just halve yours, so there's going to be a few more in each room. So have a conversation, pick someone to report back, and give you like 4 minutes and come back after that. 5 minutes. So I'll check in and see how he's going. Head in there now. And those of you that can just add to the chat, join the group, and then just, you can write in the chat while you're in there to be part of those conversations. Awesome.
If we could quickly do that, that'd be great.
Cool. So maybe we just go around each group. So someone who was in Sarah's group, do you want to add, what were some of the discussions had?
Claire, how about you, Claire?
Yep, sure. So we had some common trends actually, and some outward stress indicators were the short patience, or just it's almost paralyzing ourselves and not starting jobs because we put it in the too hard basket, or even having, so short tempers or being short with other people, which then flows into the inward stress, which is the sleeping patterns that are affected. And it was really nice to share that with other people, because it made us all realize that, we're not the only ones that get into that. But yeah, in terms of my students in GFF, I explained to the group that I have a mixture. When some students get pressured or stressed, they either get short and sharp with me and their farmers, or they go the opposite and just shut down, don't know how to explain what they're feeling or why they are stressed. So yeah, that's pretty much a summary. Hopefully I didn't miss anything.
No, sounds great. It's the scribe that's missing things at the moment. So all good. Anyone else from that group got anything to add that they wanted to feed into that?
I just think some of the others also added in, like loss of motivation, and then feeling kind of sort of procrastinating, and then that making things worse, to be able to activate and making decision making hard. I just want to say one note while we're on that, because I think this is really important, because for people to understand, when you're under stress, basically your brain perceives it to be a threatful situation, right? And so what it does is it shuts down the frontal executive side of your brain, which is the focused decision making, problem solving kind of part of our brain. And so it basically goes into more of a survival mode. So it makes decision making and kind of working through multiple hours harder, right? So recognizing that that's what's gone on, and that you're not losing the plot or useless in some way, but that's just literally your brain kicking in that survival mechanism. And that actually what we need is some ways to be able to calm our body down again, so that that part of our brain will re-engage and then be able to activate and problem solve and get on with things. So anyway, that's a bigger discussion, but I just wanted to make that point, because I think it's one that, freaks people out a little bit when it starts to happen. They're like, why can't I just concentrate, and why can't I make decisions? Yeah, it's because brain's in threat mode.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Sarah. From the other group, who was in the other group that may want to say a few things?
We talked a lot about the signs that I guess we see, poor decision making, snappy responses. Also reflected on, that sometimes we carry baggage. There's some historical stuff going on here that may appear, and it's not from the time that you've been together as a team. It's from another era, but it's real, and you've got to deal with it here and now. Talked about having one team, one path, one way to do a particular job, and we all agree to it, and we all sign it. We may not necessarily individually agree it's the absolute best way or the way we would do it, but we're part of a team. And one way also was reflected on was that, the manager leads the team, but the manager doesn't need to lead all aspects of all jobs all the time. So sharing a little bit of that leadership role can really help build that team culture and the buy-in when we have to do it somebody else's way. A good example was tailing time on one of our group's farms. They let the junior shepherd, I suppose he is, a GFF student who's coming to the end of their time, take over once the sheep are at the yards. So the manager's in charge to that point, and then that person has the responsibility from that point on, and that's a great way of explaining that. The rest of the team, you'll have to jump in because I'll run out of thoughts.
Thank you, Warwick. That was a great summary. Anyone else got anything else to add before we move on from that group? Some great conversations there anyway. Cool, Sarah. It might hand back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll just add one last point that James Bruce made, and it's such an important one, which is if we can share and let other people know how things play out for us, then we've got more chance that people will share with us what's going on for them. And like a quick example of that is I supported a team that had gone through unfortunately a team fatality from a tractor accident, and the manager on that property did such a great job of supporting his team. And when they were catching up, he sort of said, look, this is how it's affecting me. It's I'm finding this and this and this. So how's it going for you guys? And it was just a really good example of normalizing and role modeling that actually just I'm having a human response, and no doubt you guys are too, and it's okay to talk about that. So it was great. Yeah. Towards this is a resource called Under the Pump that I helped Farm Strong develop. So we're going to talk. I'll touch on Farm Strong at the end, but they have some great resources on there, and so. Basically, that exercise we just did is kind of to do with this, but you can think about how stress shows up in your body physically, how it affects us kind of emotionally and how that might show up. So you got the short fuse one, definitely, but there's all these other kind of emotional reactions we might have under stress. And then in terms of our thinking, we touched on that, but that's usually, like I mentioned, all these things in our mind are usually because the brain is under threat, but also a big one being that we just start to get dominated with lots of thoughts, often very unhelpful thoughts, right? So that ruminating is quite a big one. And then how does it affect our behavior? And that sort of more outward side of things in terms of whether we procrastinate, put things on hold, or we withdraw from people or activities. Maybe we start to rely on alcohol a little bit more. And yes, sleeping's a big one too. So it's just a little kind of checklist that you can refer to if it's helpful for yourself, for your team, or whatever. And then there's other resources, so we can come back to that. But the main message I guess I'd love to share is you don't have to be a psychologist like me to have a conversation about wellbeing or mental health. We all have mental health. It's on a spectrum, and it's just like our physical health. We may be very, very well. We might be a little bit unwell. We might be becoming increasingly unwell. So you do not have to be an expert. You just have to show up and invite a conversation, and then kind of go from there. And if you already all the things we've just talked about, if that's all then happening, then this is just an extension of that. If you start to notice some of those signs, those outward or inward kind of signs with someone, then yeah, we want to invite a conversation about that. Part of that is our listening skills, right? And so it's not necessarily that there's right or wrong ones, but I guess there's some listening styles where you're more likely to evoke open honest conversations from others, right? So if you look at that list and you think about for yourself, if you felt listened to well and supported by someone else, what kind of style are they using with you? All right. And it's just probably a reminder about cueing ourselves about what style we take with other people. Can we be present? Can we try and have an open mind when we're listening? And can we try to be patient and not leap in straight away as a problem solver? Because honestly, the biggest thing for people, if they're under stress or feeling compromised, is if they feel someone's listening to them and connecting with them. That's more important than any other strategy, if they're feeling like someone's there for them. So being a good listener is the first way you can show you're there for them. So if we skip on, yes, there's just some other tips from Farm Strong. Choosing the right time to have a conversation. Questions are really important. And then be comfortable with silence, right? I had a guy the other day and I turned up and he said, "Oh, Sarah, I just don't feel like talking about this stuff now." And I said, "Okay, that's all right. We don't have to talk about that." And we sat in silence. And then he slowly broke down and started crying. And then I just waited. I said, "I'm just here." And it was quite hard. And then he just started talking anyway. Started talking. Yeah. So just generally, in terms of how to engage in a conversation, like you can't get it wrong if you're coming from genuine concern. You just have to have a go and ask and start with a normal conversation and then extend that to, so how are things going at the moment, basically. And you can normalize that if the whole team's under pressure, for instance, you can normalize that that's going on. But if we ask open questions, how are you doing? What are you finding good at the moment? What's challenging at the moment, etc., then we're inviting a conversation, right? Or you can feed back any specific changes. So if you've seen any of those signs that we talked about and you're thinking, this is a bit off, I've noticed this and this, then you can say that to them. Hey, I've noticed that, blah, blah, blah. Just wonder what's going on for you at the moment. Right? You can use that continuum. We've all got mental health, and sometimes, we get overloaded. Using these kind of terms, these non-confronting terms, we feel a bit under the pump. We've kind of hit a wall. We're feeling a bit overloaded, a bit overwhelmed. We're tired right now. Those kind of terms are not too confronting for people. Okay. If we could skip. So there's just a couple of examples of some very specific starters for 10. They're not, they're not the only ones by any means. They're just some ideas. This is a closed question. I know some people like this question, but I don't. It's personal. Is because if you ask someone if they're okay, what do they say? Generally,
Yep.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And then you shut down,
sorry.
right? You haven't got an opening.
God.
So
Sorry.
yeah. So that's probably why I tend to avoid that one, because it doesn't open up the conversation. And people tend to save face and just go, oh yeah, they think that they want to hear that. Okay. Next one, thanks, Olivia. So just what else you can do. Like I say, just being there. You don't have to solve everything. Actually, like I said before, just listening and being there initially is massive. People feel like that someone gives a toss. You can't overestimate how big that is. But then you're checking back in. You're encouraging them to do other things that basically help our well-being, which is leisure and pleasure and connecting with other people and having time out. And we talked about that role modeling. And that message that you and others are there as needed to support them. And that might be some practical steps. And it might be asking them, what do they need right now for things to get to be easier or be more manageable? They might actually be able to answer that. And then you can offer to connect them to other channels. So just briefly to wind up, what other channels have we got? Obviously, roll to that one, Olivia. You've got us, you've got real support for them, but also for you guys. Like if you're concerned about someone or a situation, you can ring and talk to us and talk it through, and you can do it confidentially in terms of you don't have to give the person's name initially if you don't want to, or we can then talk through how we might bridge connecting with them, a strategy for that with you guys, or ringing yourself, if you're under the pump, and then we're at the end of the phone and we can come visit you on farm or in town or by phone, whatever works for you. And then there are other options like GP reviews are just quite good, because they can also just check on, is there anything else going on physically? And they can also sometimes connect into other relevant channels, and they're another monitorer is actually a person to monitor. And in the medical centres, we have things called health improvement practitioners. So they're wellbeing kind of consultants, health professionals that sit in GP practices that can spend time with people and navigate a bit of where they're at and what they need. We've now got some great online services that we can access, especially after hours for rural people. Great option at night and the weekends. And if you were immediately concerned and you needed some really immediate help for someone, then each area has a mental health crisis team, or access to one. So you can talk to someone, or you can ring the one or text the 1737. So that has qualified mental health professionals at the end of that phone. And then obviously there's also some online resources, heaps and heaps out there. All I'm going to mention probably is Farm Strong, which has a wealth of kind of some great resources on there that you can access, and 2 books. And then here's just one example of a self-help kind of evidence-based thing that can help. And lastly, we skip on those, the Farm Strong books. If we click, Olivia. The 2 books that you can have that are free, that you can request and have as many as you like of these 2 that have great stories and resources. Okay. So just looking, we've got about 5 minutes left. And so I'd just really love to jump to to James Bruce, or Brucey as we locally call him, just for any further insights about, because what you don't know is he's a great mentor. He has young people. He looks after a lot of young people in our area because he's a great way of connecting with them. So just, I guess, Brucey, any tips or insights from your experience that you think other people would benefit from hearing?
Yeah, this is all good stuff. Probably the big things from my end are with young people, especially when you're first getting to know them, is showing trust in them, because a lot of them, a few of the young people I'm dealing with are probably coming from backgrounds where they're not trusted, or not. So showing them trust, showing them respect, showing an interest in what they actually do outside of work or outside of rugby or outside of whatever you're doing with them, and treating everybody at the same level. So I coach a rugby team. There's some guys that have played 200 games. There's some guys that have played 10 games. A 200 game guy walks in late, he gets treated the same as the other guys. And told really, like in a humorous way, but partly serious, that hurry up and get going, kind of thing. And that goes a long way to opening up the young boys, because they see, oh geez, he's even treating him the same as him, and it can happen like that in the workforce obviously as well. Probably finding something that they can help you with, and sharing your experiences. So a big one for me is I'm not very good with technology, and it might be that, it could be anything, and it might not necessarily be to do with work, but something even outside of work they can help you with, and you use their knowledge, and you show them respect and an interest in the trust and those other things. And I find being at their level as well as a big thing, and showing your experiences, as in when you were their age and what you got up to, sometimes it might not really been good, and that could be, yeah, all of those things, like being at their level and all the things I've sort of mentioned. You can build that sort of a platform with them, and then when you're under the pump, need more from them in the workplace or on the rugby field or whatever, you can expect that from them because of what you've built, and the trust and the respect and the interest, all those things that have come before. And probably the biggest thing is fun. Like, always, there's an element of fun to everything. Find it yourself, live it, and let them be a part of it. And that might necessarily.
But what I'm picking up is that you invest and you get on level, and you spend the time with them, so that they feel valued, that then when you really need them to step up, they're more likely to step up. Yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. When the heat comes on, they're in it with you. And you can lean on a bit more. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Some great stuff there, guys. And just on those Farm Strong books, if you haven't got one, do get a hold of one. My husband is not a reader at all, and it was one book he actually picked up and he read the stories, which, yeah, was a little bit shocking, actually. I was like, you're reading? So it's because they're relatable stories of everyday people that you'll be able to relate to. So definitely go and check out those resources. As we said, we'll put all the resources into the Knowledge Hub as part of the series, where you'll be able to go back and look at the recording, as well as go in and have connection to all of those as well. So thank you so much. Sarah, have you got any last sort of tips or tricks you want to share? Well, I'm going to put a poll up while you're doing that.
Look, I just think, look for more opportunities like this, like the sharing of what you're doing and what works. You just, you can't beat that. You guys, you've got some great stuff you're doing. So like, keep talking to others about what works. because then we kind of, we keep learning off each other and keep improving things. And don't be afraid, like if it gets tough around communication, then also it's not a weakness to say, to access some extra help for your own, gosh, I'm finding this particular relationship hard, because it's, everybody's different, and there's different dynamics, and it's just, sometimes we get stuck, and that's okay if you need a bit of help to get over that hump. Yeah.
No, that's a great message has been shared today, and also some great lessons to take away. So thank you everybody for contributing. You'll see a little poll that's come up just to give your feedback on this. This is the last of these series. However, we welcome you to feedback any other places that you think you'd like some support in, that we've heard over any of the webinars, to be ensure that we can help you in that next journey, and the whole thing of being able to ensure that you can be great trainers and employees and build that culture on farm, which is all about how we retain people within our sector as well. So a big focus with Beef and Lamb is how do we help to retain people beyond that third year, because it's what we usually see, people coming through and then in that third year dropping off. So all these things contribute to that, and so that's what our focus is. So you'll be able to go back and listen to all those, and keep a lookout too for some different things coming up. Our Employment Hub is in its current big update to be able to help you as employers in regards to this space as well as some people focus groups and that. So lots of things starting to pop up around the place. But Sarah and Brucey, thank you very much for your time and for giving us some of your knowledge. And thank you everybody else who has contributed as well. And if you've got any questions, please, do touch base with us, and you'll get a follow-up email next week with all the other details. So thank you, and I hope the rest of your day goes well.